So as you can see and hear, the second time very archaic technology from mouth to ear directly, without any other stuff here in between. So it's mainly because you had asked me that shamanism would fit much better into this panel, that I will talk about shamanism now. And I will start with a quote, which I really liked. So 1 year ago, there was a participant in one of our seminars on shamanism. And then at the end, she mentioned, you know, I am practicing shamanism since 10 years. But this was the only time that I heard something about shamanism. Okay, so it's normal for you? For me, it was really absurd that somebody is practicing shamanism without having any idea what shamanism is. Don't you think that this is really strange? So, when we studied cultural anthropology in the 70s, shamanism was just a scientific term. It was only used in academic circles. Other people really had no idea. And it comes from the Tungusian language. And the Tungus people are living in Siberia. And it means to shake and to shiver. Because the moment this trance state sets on, it's physically aware in this movement of shivers and shakes. And so that term then became really popular, but only like in the first 10 years of the new millennium. And now people from cultures where shamanism was always alive themselves call themselves shamans, although they have many different words for this. Shaman is just a new word for something which is very archaic, and it has something to do with the past we all share as human beings. Because it is the culture which is the root of us as human beings. It goes back to 60,000 years. It was all over the planet. There was not a single culture without shamanism. And shamanism is not only this person who heals with a feather in the crown and who is drumming and using some substances. What we don't know is that shamanism is a world view. It is a perception to look at life, to look at us, to look at human people among all the other living forms of being. And this would be really important for us to understand what we can learn from shamanism. And I want to tell you that there is really big difference between shamanism and our worldview we share nowadays as technically oriented, capitalist, Western, industrial societies. It's really on the dark side of the moon. And I tell you, normally we have no idea about what shamanism really is. To make this clear, shamans ask, what can we learn from an animal? Because it was the animals who taught them which plant is a healing plant and which plant is enhancing consciousness. They learned it from animals. They observed nature, observed animals, everything really closely, and then they listened to what nature told them, and then they made their experiences. Our question is, how can we use animals? Our question is, how can we use animals? So our question is, how can you use shamanism? Our question is not, what can we learn from shamanism? And exactly nowadays, there would be lots to learn from shamanism. So the title is Shads of Shamanism. So I first want to tell you more about this shamanic worldview so that we have a better idea what it is. Because I have the feeling that we are all making our own recipe of shamanism. So we have our own ideas, and then we think, okay, that is shamanism. And then we have a lot of cross-cultural problems because we don't understand each other anymore, especially if we go to another culture where shamanism is still alive, and then we impose our ideas onto them without even looking closely what they do and what they can tell us. And this is really a problem nowadays we have. And it's a very old-fashioned problem we all have since a long time in Europe, because that was the attitude with which we went to other people and imposed our own culture on others. It's the European way to make it. It's not the British way, it's not the German way, it's the European Western way to do it. So maybe it's good to understand a little better what this worldview is. It has something to do with what we all know from the very beginning, but we forgot about it because the ideas we have in our heads are trained by the culture in which we live. I remember when I studied cultural anthropology, our professor asked us, what do you want to do? What is your idea? Why do you study this? And then he listened to all of our very nice answers, and of course the most answers he received was, yeah, I want to understand better other cultures, and I'm interested in the Indians from North America, and I want to know how they live, and so. And then he smiled, and obviously he waited for a different answer, and then nobody gave this answer, and then he said, you know, when you study cultural anthropology, what you really learn is, first of all, you understand your own culture. Because how to understand our own culture if there is nothing to compare it to? If what we think is what we do is the only way to do it. Only the very moment when you understand, oh wow, there can be a completely different thought, completely different way to behave, completely different important solutions to life, then you understand, okay, this is how we do things. This is our culture. And I tell you, this is really a long process because you are proud of you as a member of your culture, of this academic person who went to another place, now PhD something, and emancipated woman, and all of a sudden you find yourself in another culture, and then, okay, you understand you are a baby. You have no idea how to behave in a good way. People laugh at you because you don't know what wood to carry which could burn and which has properties needed because you have no idea about this culture. And this is a very, very shocking long time. And then you think, shit, I'm 25 or something, but I'm still like a crawling baby without being able to even speak the language correctly. And then, slowly, you understand, okay, maybe better I just observe, and I just listen, and I just be humble. I just step back, and then maybe I leave all the package behind, all my costumes, my Western costumes. I just listen, and I just observe what I find here. And then, slowly you understand, okay, for them, life is not linear. Life is circular. It doesn't start at the moment of our birth. It doesn't end when we are dying. It started before us, and it will continue long after us. So shamans are experts of the river of life. It's amazing. I really had the idea, oh my God, we have no historical ideas at all. Because all what we can see back, looking back to the past, is, okay, maybe there was Second World War, and before then there was this and that, and then there were the Middle Ages, they burnt the witches, and so and so. So you have some keywords. But you know, for them, if they go into trance by means of psychedelic substances, most of the time, then they fly back until they reach the Stone Ages. And they really can tell you, this and that is an animal which is now extinct. It doesn't live in their place. It doesn't live in the Himalayas, the cave bear. They never saw it. But then all of a sudden they tell you, hey, I saw in your flat there where you are living, you have this strange skull of this extinct animal, but because this animal looks into the wrong direction, you have all these problems lately. This has happened to us. I mean, it's not normal that somebody has a skull of an extinct cave bear in his bedroom, but in this case, they were true, they were right. We have such a skull. And we put it nicely because it fitted more symmetry and our way of, this is looking beautiful. And then we changed it according to this very strange information. And then we really found out, okay, things are much more in order. This sounds really strange to us because we think, okay, just by rearranging some item, things are better. But it means the focus of your life is different if you do this. You understand that you are just part of this very long river of creation, and that there was something before, and that there will be something after you. And all of this is embedded in our cells, in our memory, in the way we think, in our behaving. And it's much beyond our present culture. It has something to do with us as male and female living beings. And then, if you take them, mushrooms, or whatever they have, we found out in Nepal, where we did 30 years of field work, now it's 40 years of field work, we found out they have so many plants which are enhancing your consciousness we even had no idea of. There's even several kinds of bamboo which they take in order to alter their mind. And they have recipes of whatever kind, but you know, they don't take it in the public. You don't see them to do so. They themselves go back into a cave like their ancestors did, and then they take this plant and then they ask a question because they want to know, I don't know why this person is ill. I tried until now, whatever, and nothing happened. Nothing really changed the situation. The person didn't become healthy again. So there must be something I really quite don't see. And then, by means of this bamboo or whatever they have taken, all of a sudden they get an idea. And this new information is in their mind because of an intuition, what that might mean in their world, what that might have meant in the whole long river of life. And then all of a sudden they have a different aspect, and then they can see, okay, then I should do this and that, and so then they will have a solution to the problem. And this is what they do. So they first have a question, and then if they see I don't have an answer, then they see how to get an answer. And then with this idea, with this certain question, then they go into the state of trance, and then they receive an answer. So what they do if they take all these substances is not, okay, I want to have something really terrific. I want to see a really bright and colorful cinema. I want to be entertained, and I want to repeat what other people told me. It's great if you take this and that, and everything is shiny, and all these is covered by jewelry and so. For them, it's more to understand more about life. Us as representatives of forms of life. And then, if you do it that way, you become much more humble because you're not the master of the universe. You're not the crown of creation. You're just part of it. And really, what we need nowadays is this understanding that we are part of everything and that every single being counts. And that we really have to find a solution to the whole mess we have created. And that we have to change something in order to make things better, in order to be more in this circular view of life. So I can tell you many, many, many different keywords. Another keyword would be, our culture is dualistic. Their culture is polarist. Yeah? Okay. So if you read books, these two terms very often are used as synonyms, but they're very different because polar realities are the opposite of the same thing depending on each other. So without man, we wouldn't know what a female is. Without darkness, we wouldn't know what day is. So it's these two opposite terms which are needed in order to understand what reality is. And it's important just to understand how it is. It's needed to know it is. It's not needed to know how it should be. And this is what we do. Our dualism is based on this is good and this is bad. And this is right and this is wrong. So if light is good and ratio is good, then this is incorporated by man, and that is why men are good. And then the opposite means the female represent darkness and emotions, but this is bad because darkness is bad. And so you have this value system. And with this value system, you are not in the whole picture. You divide the picture into angels and demons. And if you do so, also you divide your own experiences into hell and heaven. And you don't understand that the angels are not the only ones to tell you something. Most of the times, it's much more the demons to tell you something. Because the demons are those we would like to shovel under the carpet. We don't like really just look at them. It's a little unpleasant. It's a little uncomfortable. We don't feel at ease. Maybe it's dangerous to look at them. And so, in order to avoid to look into the darkness, because darkness is bad and evil, we are always going into the direction of the light. But then we don't see what is lingering on in the darkness. And so we don't find another step. We don't solve our problems because we are only looking for something which is comfortable. And so this is also why, and now I tell you about some other shades of shamanism, where there were many misunderstandings. What a shaman really is and what the shamanic world really is. Imagine yourself being in the 19th century. You're one of these scholars, you're traveling around with the possibilities you had at that time, and then you come to the northern regions you meet the Sami people. The Sami people who live now in Russia, in Finland, and Sweden. And there you meet the shamans, and then shamans do something you don't understand. You don't speak their language. They tumble around and they murmur. And this is what people wrote down, okay? They have some fancy costumes, they tumble around and they do some murmuring. Because they didn't murmur, they didn't tumble, but the person who described them as such didn't really know what that meant. And even didn't dare to answer, what does it mean? Why do you do this? Why do you say these words? With what are you in contact then? And so, instead of looking behind your misunderstanding, you documented your misunderstandings as the new state of art. So, according to the zeitgeist, which also was important for all these scientists because they are also children of the time, they then labeled shamans as epileptics, or as Arctic ecstatics, or as insane people, or as outlaws. Many of these expressions. Witch doctors was also very popular, and maybe is not as wrong as we may think nowadays. And I don't know whether you're familiar with a very popular term, how shamans are labeled. Any ideas? Pardon?
Schizophrenic?
Yeah, schizophrenic, yeah. That was also historical to call them schizophrenic. But the popular label nowadays is labors of light. So our friends in Nepal, bewildered, always ask us, if we travel to Europe and then we meet our so-called European colleagues, they call themselves labor of light. I have no idea why they do so, because it's completely, it's bizarre. I have no idea. So what is wrong with your light there in Europe? Because in our culture here, the illnesses like to hide in the shade. They always only hide in the shades. Problems, psychosis, illnesses, mental, may they be mental or physical, they always tend to be in the dark. So that is why we need to go to the dark in order to bring out all these strange creatures, all these illnesses out from the shadow, and to be able to reintegrate them into the life of the person. So this is a very elementary misunderstanding to think that it's all about light, it's all about angels, it's all about higher consciousness. There is no higher and lower. There is only to be blind or to be open and to see all these different shades of shamanism and of your psychedelic experience. And to accept that if you had a nightmare, and if it was really difficult, and if you had a bad time, that is the biggest teaching in your life. That can be fantastic, because then you really understand, oh yeah, this was just my point of view. It doesn't mean that it's evil, or it's wrong, or I should have done it differently. I understand how I did it. And because I understood, that makes me being able to do it better the next time, and to learn. Because what we really need is we only learn from all these wrong things. If everything is okay and right and we always get the best grades, nothing really happens in our understanding of us and ourselves and of our life. We only understand things if we got a real teaching. And the real teaching is, sorry, that was the wrong way. Sorry, no, this was a misconception. No, this was a failure. And so, because then it's the chance to jump on a different step and to look back and to see things from a different level. And then slowly, slowly, then you see more and more, and then the perspective becomes much more kaleidoscopic, and then you can see yourself from a various different viewpoints and angles. And then you become more and more complete and whole, and that means you become more healthy. And how much time do I have still?
15 minutes.
Okay. Pardon me?
Can you talk about the art things that you were listening to?
Art. Yeah. Art, in fact, is a reflection of all of this. So the art in Nepal came from all of these experiences. So we have the tendency to ask, what did shamans learn from Buddhism? But this is the completely wrong question, because Buddhism learned from shamanism, and Hinduism learned from shamanism, because shamanism was there first. Everything else came later. And so the Tanka paintings from Nepal, for example, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, is not an invention of the Buddhist people. It's more a technique to train the shamans who are in this very long apprenticeship to understand more about their business, because it takes like 30 years, 40 years to really become a shaman. That they see pictures from their gurus, which is their teachers, and the gurus then tell them, okay, so if you're traveling to the underworld, you will meet and see those creatures, and that is how you can discern them, because this is how they look like. And so, over time, these creatures from the underworld, which are dangerous to deal with, became better known to them. And so by means of painting them, by means of producing all these Tanka paintings, they got like a map into the invisible world. They understood much better what the characterism is of an illness, how to see whether you are right or wrong, because sometimes that is not so easy. Sometimes it's an illusion to think it's right, or it's an illusion to think that was wrong. You need to strengthen your intuition, and you strengthen your intuition by learning about the symbolism of directions, of colors, of shapes, of symbols, of forms, of ornaments. And that is how all these symbols and ornaments and diagrams and everything, how it came into being, because it has something to do with a very lively way to think about it and to see things. For example, we all know that there are these insects and these reptiles which have these alarm colors, this yellowish combined with red, or black and red. So colors opposed to each other to have a signification that it might be dangerous. So that is, if you look at all these animals, if you look at the plants, and if you look at what is really taking our attention if we are traveling by traffic, it's the same symbolism. And that is just one example. So whatever we learned from our own experiences was then translated into pictures, into drawings, into signs, into into paintings. And these paintings then contain our cultural knowledge about what we had learned in the past, what we lived in the past, what we experienced through all this time. And then, if you then look at paintings, then you understand why a certain painting became an archetype. For example, the cry from Munch, this one person standing on a bridge with his mouth open, it became an archetype of fear, of loneliness. And this is also very true to us today. We are lonely because we lost orientation, very much so. Think about your daily life. In the morning, you go out of the house, and then you go into a subway, and then you travel somewhere, and then you enter a big building, and then you work there for 8 hours, and then you get home the same way. So ask yourself, how often during the day did you ask yourself what the directions are? Where is east? Where is south? Where is west? Where is north? You just follow some transportation system without any idea of where the sun rose and where it will set. So you are also devoid of any coordination system in time, because space is defined by time. The sun rises in the east, and this is morning, and it sets in the west, and this is evening. And the morning is our youth, and the evening is when we get old. So you have this orientation system in space and time, and this was given over one generation after the other. And it told us what it means to be a woman. And it told us what it means to be a man. Do you have any idea which of the two is female and which of the two is male, space or time? Did you ever ask yourself that? So tell me, give me some answers. Time is male, okay. Others agree? Okay. Who thinks it's the opposite? Okay, so, another new statistic. Because this is what I'm asking since 30 years, and it's exactly the same result. And I tell you, for the shamans, it's very clear. Time is feminine, and space is masculine. For a very simple reason. Because a girl is first a girl, then she becomes a woman because she gets her period. And then, if she gets pregnant, it takes 9 months. And then there is a certain period when she doesn't get her period again, and then she enters into a third stage. So for a woman, very physically, time is omnipresent. And if you ask someone, a couple, oh, can we meet the other week, then and then, the husband will mostly pass over the telephone and say, oh, my wife will deal with this. And consider who is collecting photos of the family. Very rarely, it's the man, because it has something to do with time. And the men are very much connected to space. The architects, all these professions which have something to do to organize space, these are really male professions, and it always has been like this. They went out to look for something where the animals are, because shamanism comes from the times when we all were hunters. And your answers fit exactly into the answers of most of the people in our modern times, because what we do is we convert female time into a male pressure system. None of us was born and became adult within a day. Whatever our technology will suggest us, which is faster and faster and faster. But in our life, time has still the same certain space and pace. So it has a certain tempo, and we cannot change this tempo. But when we change our lives into this male-organized, rapid, more and more rapidly time, then we do something to our nature, the one of us and the nature in which we live. And if we continue to make space more a place which is dominated by women, for example, you have children, they go to a kindergarten and then they meet only women, and then they go to first class elementary schools and then there's only female teachers mainly, and a young little boy is not allowed to be a boy and to be aggressive and to play in a rather rude way, but always listens to, oh yeah, please behave nicely, and so then how do we learn to deal with male testosterone, which is, here is where I am, and this is where I want to go, whereas a woman is looking around. So, maybe you now got a little idea. I didn't give you all these diagrams and all these keywords, but maybe you got a little better ideas of what shamanism really is. It has to do with elementary forces of life and with understanding and observing. And if you just go down from this, we dance always in the roof, and we forgot to build a foundation for the house in which we live, because it's so nice and it's so complicated and everything became so complicated, so we're dancing in the roof. But we need to be on stable grounds. And if we understand this, then we also understand much better what shamanism is. 5 minutes? Okay, so another suggestion, what I should add to this long story of shamanism, 60,000 years old.
I would like to know more about your experience of psychedelics in the pool.
Yeah. So they are very, very familiar with all of this. And we had the chance to walk around the mountain with shamans. And because of some basic knowledge of botany there and some ideas, we could ask them, hey, is this a plant which you could use in order to find solutions to your problems? And then we picked the plant and we put the plant into the hand of the shamans, and very often we saw that they immediately began shaking. And really they fell in trance within a second, because that was a very powerful plant. And immediately they had this message from this plant, I'm very strong. I can act very strong on your imagination, on your brain, on what is happening. I'm not a food for your stomach. I am a food for your ideas and for your brain. And that was very impressive to see how very, very close these people are really to all these plants. And for them, it's not about, is it good or bad, or should I take it or not, or is it evil or forbidden or criminal or whatever. For them, it is another family in the plant, in all these plant relationships, which is very important and it's part of their whole culture. So it's not so very spectacular, and that is why nobody goes to the shamans from Nepal to drink with them bhang or something. It's not like in the Amazon, which is, by the way, also very interesting. Many people who are drinking ayahuasca with shamans in the Amazon, who are also shamans, and just to say something in between, the big difference between shamanism in Nepal, the rooftop of the world, and shamanism in the Amazon, and, in the jungle, on the other side of the globe, is that shamans in Nepal cooperate with each other. They share their rituals, they share the state of trance. And in the Amazon, they are competitive. Everybody is a rival. Everybody is not as good as I am. And you may like this competitive thing not so much as you like this being together and working together. But it doesn't matter what we think about it. It is like it is. We need to understand how things are, not how we want to have them. It's not what do you wish, and then I give you what you wish. It's more, why is it like this? And I tell you why. It has a very good reason. In the jungle, in the Amazon, tribes can only survive within a certain distance from the other village, because there is only a very limited variety of plants and animals and food and whatever. So if there's more people in the same area, it needs to be limited, this bigger number of people, because if the number of people increases, the whole jungle dies. So human beings are not the top of the crown. It's not important whether every human being survives. It's important whether the whole system survives. And so it's very normal and very natural that in their culture, it's a competition between shamans. Whereas if you are in the Himalayas, people depend on each other because they live in different heights where different crops grow and different animals live, and so they traded. All the time they traded things from one place to the other. And if you travel in the Himalayas, then you have to speak all these different languages, and then you have to trade and negotiate with all these other people. And so no wonder shamanism is also part of partnership, because in their rituals, shamanism and the trance they all share is a matter of limited time. So if you're really good, maybe you can maintain a time of 10 minutes to be in trance. But if the problem is stronger and you didn't find the solution, you need to prolong this time. So you need another colleague to jump into. And this other colleague is not traveling around in his own personal fantasies. He reaches the very same spot where his colleague had left because he couldn't maintain trance so long. So then they work with each other and then they exchange their knowledge. And so forget about, in the Amazon, people are so very competitive and they are always rivals and so. It's our German, English, whatever European prejudice we have because we didn't understand what it really is behind. I mean, there would be many more answers, but maybe we ran out of time now.